how to pay off your mortgage in 7 years, then what are the strategies, the simple, passive, active, what kind of strategies, different things can be done to pay it off sooner than later. Julius will talk about the locations which are more interesting, and towards the end we'll take queries. Hi everyone, Mudit and Julius here. We are going to talk about how to pay off your mortgage in 7 years, what kind of strategies are there. But before we start, just a disclaimer on your screen that the information we are sharing today is general in nature and it's to be used as a guide only. Please don't take it as a personal advice for your situation. Before you take a step, please consult professionals. Please take advice from whether it's on the legal side, financial side, from corresponding professionals, and then move forward. All right. So yes, the topic is how to pay off your mortgage in 7 years. Now, a lot of people come back to us who have taken a loan, whether as owner-occupied or investors, that how do we pay it off sooner? General loan term in Australia has been maximum 30 years. Some banks do give a bit higher loan term also, but everybody wants to know how can we pay it off sooner, whether it's 7 years, 10 years, whatever time frame, but nobody wants to extend it to 30 years, right? So we're going to talk a lot about that. So the agenda is we'll cover why PropWealth and Infinity Financials, the two companies that we are representing today. What's with the 7 years? Why are we talking about 7 years? Then what are the strategies, the simple, passive, active, what kind of strategies, different things can be done to pay it off sooner than later? Then key pillars regarding the same, we'll have a discussion on that. Julius will talk about PropWealth next and the locations which are more interesting. And towards the end, we'll take queries. Any questions you have, so please keep putting your queries in the Q&A section, which is on your screen, because we are going to take the questions in the end. So please keep typing, okay? So first introducing Julius. If you are on internet, on social media, and you're searching about property, you would have seen his name, you would have seen his face. A lot of people recommend him. He's a very, very popular figure in the social media, especially when it comes to anything on property front. So he's heading the research and property acquisition, co-founder of PropWealth. Massive experience, 15 years ID experience, and he specializes in the data research and algos. Very, very hands-on, savvy investor across Australia and New Zealand. Julius is going to talk a lot about locations, property, PropWealth, research, and all of that. Hi, I'm Mudit. I'm director and mortgage expert with Infinity Financials. I've been a serial entrepreneur, 20 plus years experience across strategy, finance, and technology. I was fortunate to go to some premium schools. I did engineering from IIT Kanpur, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and have worked across multiple finance and strategy sectors, and like guiding people in their journey when it comes to thinking about strategy of investment and how do they move forward. Infinity Financials today, we are ranked in the top few mortgage companies across Australia. So quickly covering some base ground on why PropWealth. So PropWealth is a leading buyers agency focusing a lot on data research. Julius heads that, and it focuses on research and data and then what strategy, right? And it has a footprint across Australia and already completed almost 400 plus deals, and the value of property purchased is close to 300 million plus. But the biggest and important parameter that I like about it is the equity growth in the last 12 months has been 36%. That's very, very impressive. Just talking about Infinity Financials. So Infinity Financials has been there for close to 10 years now. It has served 10,000 plus clients. It is led by Parag Dixit, who's my partner and mentor as well. He's ranked in the top 10 brokers in Australia since 2021. I focus a lot on first-home buyers, refinancers, and some investors. And Infinity Financials, we are known as strategists for simple to complex cases. Complex, whether it's about trust, multiple companies, structures, SMSF, and any kind of other complex lending. Yes, so you see on your screen a bit of complex graph. So let's talk about why 7 years, right? I just want to talk to you, if you've taken a loan and you know that when you make a repayment, there's always two parts of the repayment. paying a bit of principal and paying a bit of interest in every repayment you do. But it's not always equal. It changes. So let's say if you have a loan amount of $600,000 and currently let's say the rate of interest of 6%. I'm not sure if you know it or not, but the total interest that you'll pay across 30 years will be more than the loan amount. So it will be close to $695,000. So you will be paying back the bank roughly roughly $1.3 million for a 600K loan over 30 years. How does it happen over the 30 years? So let's say in year one, if you add up all your repayments, you would have paid roughly $7,300 in principal, while you would have paid $35,000 of interest. That means in the initial few years, the repayments you're paying more towards the interest, less towards the principal. And slowly, the graphs keep changing. And in the second half of your repayment loan term, you pay more part of your repayment towards principal and less towards the interest. So in the graph, if you see, the red lines show the interest part of the repayment, and the blue graph shows the principal part. So initially the interest is much higher. So in the first 2 years itself, you pay roughly $15,000 of interest, while you would have paid $71,000 of interest, which is 2% principal, 2.5% principal, but 10% interest. Now this figure becomes very interesting in 7 years. In 7 years time, you would have paid 10%, you would have returned 10% of principal, but paid almost 35% of the interest. And so during this time, and at this time, if we can do something so that the ratio between interest and principal is not so much skewed, that will be really great. And that's why we talk about 7 years. Now, of course, it need not be exact 7 years. For some people, if you're able to return in 7 years or 8 or 10, that's fine. But these are the numbers which kind of drive that what is the importance of the same. Many people focus on a strategy where they refinance every 2 years. That, okay, 2 years done, let's refinance it again, refinance it again, refinance it again. And then the question is it a good strategy? Now, there are two things about it. Now, refinancing every 2 years means what? If you reset your loan terms to 30 years again, that means you restart your higher portion of interest repayment when the 2 years end. So your loan essentially is, if you refinance after 2 years and again take a loan term of 30 years, then that becomes a total loan of 32 years. And if you do it again after 2 years, the total loan term becomes 34 years. So if you're extending your loan term, obviously that you're going to pay higher interest. But because you're restarting it from 2 years again, so your interest, so if you look at these numbers, so instead of 10% in principal that you would have paid 10.5%, you would have paid in first 2 years. Here after 6 years, in first 7 years, here after 6 years also, the principal part you would have paid would be 8.5%, while interest will be 29%. So refinancing every 2 years and setting the loan term back to 30 years may be a good strategy from a view if you're looking to use that money in certain other ways. But if you're purely looking at saving interest, it may not be the best way to do it. And we'll talk about more that if you refinance, then what kind of things you can do with that money, right? So if you are able to invest that money where the cost of borrowing is higher, then it starts making more sense. So it's not a one strategy for everyone, but we have to see that what is your goal that you're looking for by taking out that money and increasing the loan term again. So there are some key pillars around which we are going to discuss our strategies to pay off the loan, the mortgage early. Contribute. Now, contribute means how do you contribute more towards your loan and what kind of impact does it have? Simple strategies. Earn. How do you earn more? And how do you use that money? What kind of things to keep in mind? Again, we are talking about some simple things that you already might be aware of. We'll cover some of those, or if you're not aware, then it will be a gentle reminder again. Churn. This is an active strategy where you churn and you use that money more effectively, more actively to figure out that how do you use that money to generate more wealth for you. We'll do some case studies around this as well. And reduce. How do you reduce your debt? What kind of things to keep in mind in order to make sure that you're reducing your higher cost debts first? How do you consolidate? What are things to keep in mind there? Again, some very simple things that can be done. So a lot of these are simple things. Some are complex. We're going to discuss a lot in detail. And if you have any questions, again, like I said, feel free to put in the Q&A section. We'll take them in the end. So contribute strategy. What does it mean? Now, when you're making repayments, you can make the repayments weekly, fortnightly, monthly. These are options with almost all the banks. The, the lower the frequency of repayment, that means weekly, is better than fortnightly, which is better than monthly, because you're paying off faster. So your interest is accrued at a smaller term, plus you're forced to kind of make some extra repayments. We'll see that more in the next slide. You can make some one-off extra payments, and it has a big impact. Even a small payment there can have a pretty big impact on the overall saving in the interest. Not only that, there's another way where you can make extra repayments on a periodic basis. So let's say if you're making monthly repayments, what if you start making $100 extra or $200 extra, depending on what your cash flow looks like. If you make that extra repayment every repayment that you're making, how does that impact? So let's look at some options. So if you make fortnightly repayments, the good thing about that is fortnight, there are 26 repayments. So there's one extra repayment per year, which forces you to do some extra saving, right? So that's the beauty of just changing the frequency of it. If your salary credit is happening on a fortnightly basis, it might be very easy to set up your fortnightly repayments. One-off extra repayment. Now, look at the graph here on your screen. One-off extra repayment, let's say if you make a $20,000 repayment, extra repayment after 2 years. $20,000, just taking an example because a lot of people get bonus. Let's say it's a yearly bonus and you get a $20,000 off, or let's say $30,000 bonus. Now, you can use that bonus in multiple ways. Of course, you might have planned a vacation and you keep a part of it there. But what if you take 20,000 out of it and make an extra repayment? That lump sum repayment one time of $20,000 will save roughly $79,000 of interest over the period of loan. That means it will shave off straight away 2 years and 3 months off your loan. Just one extra repayment of $20,000. That's the kind of impact. So if you're getting more money, let's say you get inheritance, that is something that you can use for doing this, or bonus, or you get some money from, you had some friend had borrowed money from you and you get it back. So you can think about using it, part of it for your lifestyle, but part of it for making extra repayments. Another good example is making extra repayments to the principal with every repayment. So if you've set up your weekly repayments or fortnightly repayments, let's say if it is, let's say $3,500, right? If you increase it by $200, if you're able to do that with every repayment, it can have a huge impact. $100 fortnightly repayment is equivalent to maybe a coffee or 2 coffees a day. If you are able to make that just $100 per fortnight, it will save $114,000 of interest, which means 4 years of time in your loan terms saved straight away. So instead of 30 years, it becomes a 26-year loan. A huge impact in the overall scheme of things. Second strategy we discussed after contribute is earn. Again, these are simple things, something that you might already be thinking about, that maybe I can do a side hustle. There's a 9-to-5 job. After that, I have few hours left. And I have a skill that I can use for something. If you have a side hustle, that can be used. Think of that as extra income you're earning to pay off your mortgage and to get a better lifestyle as well. But that is something which can be used here. Bonus, we already spoke about it. Credit card reward points. Use your credit cards more effectively. If there are points accruing there, you can think of ways that use them first to buy whatever you're buying, and save your income so that you can make that extra repayment, $100 a fortnight kind of thing. It will save you a lot of money. Next strategy, again, this is the active one, which is debt management, churn. Now, when you buy a property, a lot of people understand the concept of debt and equity there, right? So the loan that you have is called the debt, but if the value of the property, let's say if it's a $1.5 million and your loan is only $1.2 million, then you have a $300,000 equity in that. How can you use that equity and invest that money in a more active way so that you can benefit by power of leverage? We're going to cover more about this. How about interest-only strategies? What if you pay, instead of making your repayments as a principal and interest, what if you change it to interest only? What are the benefits, pros and cons of doing that? And then how do you churn your debts? You might have multiple debts. By churning them, by consolidating them, how do you save more money on that? And the fourth strategy, reduce. These are again a lot of things here, a bit of technical as well. Some people, so generally whenever we get a loan for any client, we discuss a lot about like offset, redraw. These are some very good features that banks have started giving. So if you have extra money, and let's say if you want to keep the flexibility of liquid money in your bank account, you don't want to pay it off reduce your loan itself. So one option we said that you make extra repayment. So that is money going towards towards reducing your loan itself. But if you have some extra money, but you want the flexibility of money being in your account, maybe for emergency fund, maybe for planning something, then you can use the offset feature of banks, where whatever money you keep in your bank account, if that bank account is linked to the loan account, then if you have, let's say, a $800,000 loan, and if you have $100,000 kept in your offset account, which is your bank account, which is linked to the loan account, then you're charged interest only on 700K. That way you save money, save interest on that 100K, plus you get the flexibility of having that having that liquidity in your account as well. Similarly, redraw works, in which you make extra repayments, but you still have the option of withdrawing that money. Now, second option is to pay off higher cost debts first. Let's say if you have multiple debts, personal loan, car credit cards, car loan, and each one will have a different interest rate. It makes sense to pay off those debts first if you're getting extra money, which are costing you higher. Don't think about paying off your home loan at that point of time, but if your car loan is costing you 9%, pay that off first. The other thing there is also to think about debt consolidation. Now, you can merge your debts into one loan. A lot of times, because your home loan generally will be home loan is a secured loan against the property, and because of the nature of the loan itself, it is generally a lower cost debt. So if you have multiple debts, credit cards, personal loan, car loan, HEX, if you can merge them with the home loan, it can help a lot in terms of managing your core cash flow better, because it will be spread over a longer term. Right now, your personal loan may be spread over 2 years only. So your monthly repayments might be $1,000 for a small loan of $30,000 itself. But if you consolidate along with your home loan, it can become a loan across 30 years or 25 years, whatever your loan term is. And then you will probably be making a repayment of just $100 a month instead of $1,000 a month. You straight away save a lot on the cash flow. So depending on your personal situation, your financials at that point of time, consolidation can help you get the benefit of saving or your cash flow. But of course, if it is extended over a period of time, for a longer period of time, overall interest may be higher. So it depends on what your financials are. Talk to your mortgage broker. We should be able to help you figure out what works for you. A very important thing is interest rate renegotiation. This we do with all our clients all the time, because no bank will just drop your rate just like that. Of course, when RBI reduces, the banks have to pass it. But it's not, sometimes they act a little not in favor of you. They are in the business of lending money. They are in the business of making profit. Banks may not reduce your rates by themselves. We talk to the banks, we keep negotiating with them, and that's what something you should do, either directly with the bank or through the lender, through your mortgage broker, or talk to us. Talking to the bank and asking them for revaluating your portfolio. If your property value has gone up, you might be able to renegotiate your interest rate. As simple as that. The simple thing is to ask. And of course, we spoke about reducing the loan term. If you have a 30-year loan, if you reduce it to 25 years, your repayment will go up. But because the overall loan term is reducing, overall interest will come down. So these are some very, very simple things to do, which can help reduce your interest cost a lot. Now, coming to the interesting topic where we were talking about equity and the debt, power of leverage. Now, this is something which is important to use. Why? What do we mean by power of leverage? Leverage multiple things. In your life, you can leverage financials, operations, your time, and yourself. And each one of has a huge impact on how you're building your wealth, what is your goal, how you're creating your portfolio, right? So leveraging financial means use borrowed funds to generate more wealth. Your cost of borrowing will determine that what kind of return you generate. And if you're able to generate high return, that's a massive way in which you can build wealth. If you leverage operations is whether it's about your business or managing your property portfolio, it has a direct impact on your business growth. Utilize your time. If you're skilled at something, your profession, utilize the professionals, their guidance and make a team of good individuals who are highly skilled, and use their expertise, use their time to help you navigate your journey towards your goal. And use your connections. Social capital is such an important thing. Use your connections, your network, reach out to people, discuss with them, get more education, get more knowledge. It will help you in a sustainable growth. These are critical things to think about. I know that a lot of us are already thinking about this, but if you're not actively thinking, the idea is just to remind you that these are things to think about, to make sure that your goal and your journey towards it is aligned. Financial leverage, like I said, the goal is that the return on the assets, whatever assets you are generating, whatever assets you're buying, whatever money you have, are you able to generate more return on that compared to the cost of it? If you're able to, let's say if you take a loan of, let's say $100,000, and if the interest you're going to pay on that is 6%, if you're able to generate 10% interest return on that money, are you not better off? That's the question to think. It's not always that debt is bad. There's good debt and bad debt. You have to think about the debt you are taking. Is it good debt or bad debt? If you're able to generate more money, it can help you reach your goal faster. And you can, a lot of time clients come to us and they're thinking about what they have currently. Yes, it's very important to know that what you have currently, but can we use some income, some gains, some money, borrowed funds to, instead of using the personal fund itself, to make that wealth, to generate more money, to invest somewhere where it helps you, again, increase the speed at which you're moving in your financial journey and move to financial freedom faster. So think about, so leverage is always not bad. Leverage depends on how you are going to put that money to use. I want to cover a small case study here. So I want to talk about Mahesh and Deepa, and within 10 years, they have made $3 million worth of equity. They started their journey way back in 2015, where they bought an owner-occupied property of $1.1 million and took an almost $950,000 loan on it. After some time, after a few years, they realized that they have to make an investment property. They bought an investment property worth $580K in Queensland. And in 2021, bought another investment property worth $1.15 million with a rental yield of 4.8%. And then in 2022, another investment property. They had the financials where they were able to buy big ticket items relatively and make those as investment properties. Today, when they look back, they are sitting on a total asset worth of $6.7 million and the loans are worth $3.7 million. So what did they do? What was, out of what we have discussed, what did they do differently? They bought first property. They realized that the property value is going up. They used the equity in that property. They asked the bank to give them the equity cash out, use that fund to buy another property. They took debt from the bank, put their equity in that property, and see that grow. When the first investment property grew, after that, they used the equity of that investment property to buy another investment property. So using equity from the bank, from the property that has already gone up, and using the debt from banks, they were able to buy multiple properties. And because property has been growing over a period of time, today they are sitting at a free equity from just the investment properties at $1.5 million. And within 10 years, they've made $3 million in equity. Now, this is the power of leverage, where you use leverage to generate a property or an asset which gives you a higher return than what your debt is. So they invested roughly $200K for the first property as deposit, then used equity to buy multiple properties, and then they have a free equity of $1.4 million. We just discussed this, right? Similarly, another case study, meet Jay. Jay has made a good portfolio despite not being a high income earner. The family income in 2016 was $130,000, modest. They realized that they will not be able to buy a house to live in. So they chose to buy an investment property first. So in 2018, they bought a small investment property of $350K. Another investment property a few years later. In 2019, instead of buying another property, they enhanced their investment property, built a granny to make sure that they started getting another income. And then they bought another property. This time they went with a different structure. They bought a property under trust. And then in 2022, they were able to use the equity from all these properties to buy a house to live in. They bought a $1.2 million house. So their journey was very different compared to Mahesh. Their journey was to rent west, buy an investment property, use equity to buy another investment property, buy another one, and then finally from all the properties that they had accumulated, they sold one, they used the equity to buy a dream home to live in. Now, these are different strategies for different people. You don't have to copy any one of them, but it depends on what your financials are, what your circumstances are, and what your goal is. The strategy depends on that, but leveraging can take you there faster. So when we talk about these journeys, your strategy can be either sell investment properties to pay off your owner-occupied loan. So after 5 years, 7 years, you have multiple investment properties, you have invested in a portfolio, you can sell them off, pay off your mortgage, pay off your owner-occupied loan. That's how you close your loan sooner in 7 years or 10 years because of the growth in the equity in the properties. Or the other option could be that you retain these investments, let the equity grow. And maybe you sell after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. The higher you hold the properties for, the longer equity you can make. You can also use IO repayments to maximize your tax benefits. And another active strategy is to transfer the debt from your owner-occupied property to your investment properties. This is debt churning, and the reason to do that is because you get negative gearing benefits, tax benefits on investment properties. You want to discuss more? Happy to answer queries towards the end, or we can have a one-on-one session offline after this webinar. So key pillars of building a portfolio where you can grow your wealth faster. Now, depending on where you are in your journey, either you are a first-time investor or a rent investor, or you already have a medium portfolio investor or large portfolio, there are different things that you will need to think about. As a beginner, you need to think about, okay, whether you are interested in building a portfolio or not. What is your choice? And then the strategy will be either start with buying your own home or investing or whatever. Second, if you're already a rent investor, you need to start thinking about structuring the loans. The right structure of loans is very, very critical to take you where you want to go. Bad structure creates problems both in terms of cash flows and which can restrict your capital growth. So structuring of loans, whether what kind of loan, principal and interest or interest only, or the repayments, how they have to be fixed rate or a variable rate loan, these are important. Offset feature or not offset feature, these are important from a loan structuring perspective. For property investors who already have some properties, it's very, very important to start thinking about ownership structuring. The ownership structuring can be a complex subject. You can buy properties under your name, under a trust or under SMSF. You need proper guidance from an accountant, mortgage broker, buyer's agent to understand that what structure will work for you better, because you don't want to get restricted and have a very high opportunity cost later. A wrong structure may lead to not be able to build a bigger portfolio. So ownership structuring is very, very critical from borrowing perspective and from taxation perspective as well. And large portfolio investors, of course, all this combined is into strategy. But ultimately, we're talking about strategy being the most important thing of all things here. But finally, it boils down to what property are you buying. If your property is growing up in value, you make money. If the property that you've bought doesn't grow up in value, you don't make money and you can't use equity. And that's where it becomes very, very important to understand where to invest if you're looking at active investment strategy. And I would like to introduce Julius here and want to ask him to share his insights about how to find the right property, what goes in there, what kind of research is required, and what does this follow. Julius, over to you.
Thank you, Mudit, for an insightful session. Good evening, everyone. Let's discuss about how to find a next $1 million property in the suburb. So, for every investor, either you're starting your journey, either you're buying through the SMSF, either you're buying your fifth or sixth property, just first question in the mind, where should I buy? And the property which I'll buy, whether that will appraise in the capital value, whether I'll get a good tenant, what kind of rental income will I get, what kind of suburb it would be, what would be the future potential of the suburb, because there are like more than 15,000 suburbs across Australia. 15,000. That is like two, and then every suburb will have more than 40 data points, because when you look at the data, probably there will be 100 data points. There are more than 40 critical data points which we analyze to understand whether to get into that council or the suburb or not. And whenever we are into the boom cycle, it depends on what stage of boom cycle are you in. So if suppose if you are at the bottom of the market, then it's early to the boom cycle. The weightage for every data point is different. When you will be in the mid, then the weightage will be different, and when you are at the peak, then analysis of the entire data would be a different. So either you will be analyzing data either the boom of the mid of the boom cycle, bottom of the boom cycle, or the peak of the boom cycle. It's very important. According to that, we have to take the decisions. So it's very complex, and to understand and so to resolve this complex query, we have built a software called PropelNext. That is an in-house proprietary software built by us, where we get data from multiple sources. That's all in all the raw format. We scrub the data, we mine it, we put our algorithm on top, and then we understand the patterns about how the market will be react into the particular council or the suburb in a short term and the long term basis, and then whether that suburb or the council will have a long term growth or not. So in PropelNext, basically we have multiple sections. The first major matrix is called demand and supply indicator. Demand and supply indicators are extremely important, because wherever the demand is higher and supply is lower, then we'll have a price rise. But what kind of parameters we look for in demand and supply? First of all, we look for the stock and market. For an example, if you're buying in a suburb where there are like 1,000 properties and there are 100 properties on the sale, then the stock and market is 10%, which is very high. So they are like, we have to define the thresholds. So we look at the stock and the market, and then we also look at the inventory count. So for an example, currently stock and market is 3%, and then if you have 6 months worth of inventory, that means it's huge. That's why we look at the inventory also. If suppose the stock and market is reducing, which is good, that means market is going into the boom cycle. But if you still have more than 6-7 months of inventory, that means there's a lot of supply to be consumed before you go to the next rollover. So that's why we look at the inventory also. We also look at the building approvals, very important. For an example, stock and market is low, inventory is lower, but if there is a lot of building approval pipeline, and in 1 to 2 years down the line, yes, there will be a lot of stock which has been infused into the market, then it's not good. That's why we have to look for the building approval. When we look at the building approval, we also look at the absorption rate of the building approval. Sometimes building approvals are good. That means it's growing, more population is coming up, we need more houses, and that's how. If the consumption rate is more than 80 to 90%, that means whatever the number of new houses which will be infused into the stock level will be absorbed. Around 80 to 90% of the stock is absorbed, which is good. If the absorption rate is low, that means there will be more stock into the market which will be oversupplied, and then market will be either neutral or it will be oversupplied, and then you will have a price drop. So we look at that. We also look for, in demand side, we look for the affordability. That is very important. Currently, if you are working in a market where demand and supply has a lot of gap, but within the owner occupier, if there is no affordability. So in affordability, there are two types of affordability: buying affordability and the renting affordability. If there is no buying affordability, that means irrespective of you have a high gap between the demand and supply, still because of the lower affordability, the prices will not rise. Also, before we see a price rise into the property, we see what kind of rental rises are happening. When the rental prices will start rising, then it will have a ripple effect on the property price rise. So we look at the renting affordability also. For an example, if the renting affordability is more than 50% of your salary, those who are living there, then yes, you will not have a rental rise. That means the vacancies will go higher because people can't afford to rent there. So we look at the affordability matrices. We also look at the demographic changes. In Australia, in ABS terms, we have a C5 indexes, which shows what kind of socioeconomy it was and whether it is improving or not. If the socio-economic indicators are improving, that means more amount of high income earners are moving into that particular council, and then price rise. But if there is significantly no changes, then we have to take we have to analyze it again. So that's why we look at demographic changes. We also look at the auction clearance rate. If the auction clearance rate are very low but it's improving, that means more demand is being created into the market, and if there is less supply into the market, then you'll have a price rise. So sometimes if you have good auction clearance rate, but if there is enough supply of the inventory in the market, then market will be still cool. So that's why we have to look at both the numbers. We also look at the rental turnovers. Rental turnover is important because if you have very less vacancies because of the high turnover, That means you'll have a rent rise, lower vacancies, more amount of rent rise, then it will impact on the price rise. So we'll look at the rental turnover also. We also look at a population growth, very important factor. In a council where or region where if the population growth is above state average, that means it happens for the reason, either because of the more number of job opportunities or the affordability or because of more number of infrastructure growth. So we look at, okay, from the ABS from last 2 or 3 censuses, what kind of population growth happening, type of population growth, whether retirees are moving there or young families. It will define, okay, if they are the young families, what are the incomes. We also look at the family sample size, which will define, okay, sample size is great, population growth is good, young families are moving there, extremely low supply, higher demand is created, yes, then definitely low price rise. So we look for the population growth. We also look for the immigration numbers. We also track the median incomes. Very important, because if the median incomes are in between $1,500 to $2,000 and the median prices of that particular suburbs are around $650,000 to $700,000, that means it's a great affordability within the population. And if the median income is rising over the period, so we look at the forecasting of the income. So if the forecasting is higher, median income is increasing, population growth is rising, and then prices are still lower, more affordable, very low supply, higher demand, price rise then we'll have a price rise. That's why we look at the median income. We look at the gentrification, as I said, we track the C5 index to understand what kind of population is moving there, and we take a call whether to go into that suburb or not. So we look at the gentrification also. With this, we also look at the macroeconomic indicators like job opportunities. Very important, because if there are more number of job opportunities, then what kind of job opportunities? Are those like permanent kind of job, or there will be a big project from the federal government, and then after implementation there will be only small subset of the permanent job will be created. So we look at that. We also look at the employment diversity. Very important. We don't want it to get into the suburb or location where the entire industry is dependent on single industry. There is no diversification within the employment. That means, for an example, mining is the industry where, okay, a lot of Australian minor or regional towns are depend on. So we don't want it to get in there. So that's why we look at the employment diversification. And in our system, we have calculated with the concentration risk. So wherever the concentration risk of every major category of the employment is more than 20%, a system flags it. So we have taken care of that into the system as well. Socioeconomic indicators, we look at the hospitals, schools, shopping and amenities. We also track the affluency score to understand whether that is been changing in a positive manner or the negative manner, which will impact on the prices. So we check on that. We also look at new and existing infrastructure creation. Very important. If the new infrastructure is created, then we have to check, okay, whether it is to serve the new population or the current population. If the new infrastructure has been created to accommodate the next population growth, that means the areas have a more demand created because of the fundamentals. So we track that. We look for the transportation and the power infrastructure. If that is growing, that means yes, more number of jobs are coming there because of the industrial growth. We check that. We look at the rezonings. So for an example, according to the strategy, if you're buying a property very close to the CBD where you wanted to hold the land for a longer time, then rezoning is very important, because we're holding the land where you can build or manufacture the equity. So that's why we track all the zoning changes. On screen, this is the backend of our system where you could see a radar for the IC3 houses. Radar is a filtration scheme where the risk score is divided between 1 to 5. Score of 1 means the lowest risk, which is good, and score of 5 means highest risk, which is not great. Statistically, entire Australia is divided into the multiple statistical areas. So statistical area 3 means the council, statistical area 2 means suburb, and then statistical area 1, they're called SA1, means basically it's a subset of the suburb. When we do the research, we look at the bigger boundaries because the statistical reliability of the data is good. So we look at the council first, and on that council we look at, okay, what was the historical growth of that area? That's called 10 years price change. If the 10 years price change was great, that means historically the area was growing at around 7 to 8% on an average. That means yes, fundamentally that area is good. It's not something where people are not holding for a longer time. It's not a flipping market, or it's not a mining dependent market. So we look at that. We also look at the current demand and supply indicators, like from last 1 to 3 months, what are the price changes? That means how the demand has been created. We also look at the inventory. In the inventory, we look at, okay, what is current inventory? We also have a forecasting engine. So we look at the trends, current inventory, and then we look at the forecast. For an example, current inventory is low, but forecast is very high. That means the prices are going to be chosen. If suppose the current inventory is large but the inventory forecast is good, that means yes, the more demand is going to be created and then you'll have a price rise. So we look at that. We also look at the days on market, how many days it will take to sell the properties. We also look at the forecasting to understand, okay, whether the days on market in future are going to be increased or reduced. If it is reducing, that means good, the price rise will happen. As I said before, we look at the fully owned score, which is good to understand, because if suppose there are more number of population who owns the property without mortgage, that means the area is very stable, and then hold period of those properties are very high, which is good. We also look at the buying affordability and the renting affordability to understand if the buying affordability is better and the demand and supply is a lot of gap, that means long term you have property growth. So we check that. Here we track the census data to understand, okay, from last few censuses, what are the population growth and the family sample sizes, incomes and all the stuff. We also look at, this is a CFA index. So this CFA index we'll be tracking from last 3 to 4 censuses to understand whether the CFA index is changing or it's on the same point. So we can see whether the area is gentrifying or not. We check that. That is the jobs by category. So wherever the concentration risk is more than 20%, then it's in the high concentration risk. So if you look at the score for the concentration is higher, where the max is 20%. So we check that into our system. So what did we achieve by Propel Next? We have been using this system from last more than 1 year. So what we have witnessed is a lot of investors and were trying to buy properties across Southeast Queensland or the Northeast Queensland, where the valuation were not stocking up, people were overpaying, job concentration risk is too high, rental proportion is more than 50%. We started buying properties across the regional and digital where the vendor discounting was higher, property was affordable and cheaper. We used to buy a lot of properties with the dual income. And now we could see the area is completely into the boom cycle. We have achieved around 15 to 20% growth from last 8 to 9 months. So that's the beauty of the data. So what are the next location which could be a potential hotspot? So first location is Shepparton. Affordability wise, great score, 100. That means yes, it's affordable location. Good income within the population. Affluency is improving. The score is at the mid. Demand and supply has a lot of gap now. Employment diversification is fine. Overall score is 83. That means you can actually look at that entire council. Second is the Dubbo. In NSW, affordability is much higher. Affluency is better, especially towards the South Dubbo. Demand and supply is extremely low. Employment diversification is good. Overall score is 85. Great location to invest. City of Bunbury towards the southern side of the Perth, hardly around 100 to 150 kilometers from the Perth CBD. Most affordable location, lifestyle location as well. Affluency is okay. Few pockets are literally too low socio-economy, so we have to avoid few pockets. Demand and supply has a lot of gap. Employment diversification is good. Overall score is 78. That means if you're able to secure a good property with good price negotiation and then great rental yield, then you will have a good equity on the property. KC Council, Southeast Melbourne, extremely good for the owner occupiers, very expensive. The property prices are in between $800 to $1 million. Affordability wide, yes, because of a lot of owner occupiers, but affluency is better. Demand and supply has a bit of gap created, but if you go towards extreme north, then probably you'll have a lot of supply again. Employment diversification is good. If you can afford a great amount of negative gearing on your portfolio, then yes, you can look into that council. The last is Albury Wodonga. Extremely affordable, good affluency, demand and supply has significant gap. Currently market is super hot over there. Yields are around in between 4.8 to 5.2%. Employment diversification is great. Overall score is 80. That means you can actually look at the entire area. So in nutshell, when we look at the research for the property, when you're looking at the property, look at all aspects of the data, just not at the demand and supply. Look at the affordability, look at the gentrification, look at the employment opportunity in that area, create your proper strategy and take an informed decision. Just don't jump on the conclusion. From here, I would like to hand over it to Mudit.
Hi, Julius. Thanks for the enlightenment towards research. I think whenever I talk to people, and people who are looking to invest or even first home buyers, especially about investors. First home buyers, you know where you want to buy, kind of suburbs, budget, all that is fixed. But whenever I talk to investors, I think first and most important thing I tell them is, and my advice always is that doesn't matter whether you hire a professional or you want to do it yourself, whichever way you want to choose, but do a solid research. It's a $500,000, $1 million. We're talking about very, very high value asset purchase here, probably the most expensive thing you buy in your life. So research is critical. And Julius, thanks for your session, because it kind of highlights the point that so much of research is required. And the good thing about the geography we were talking about is that there's huge amount of data available. Of course, it poses the other challenge that sometimes analysis becomes paralysis, and people sometimes get bogged down by the amount of data. But I think if we look at it in the positive light, that data helps you do a better research, and that can help you buy something which has a higher chances of growth. So I think research there is critical. So thanks a lot, Julius. And guys, so just kind of we are moving towards the Q&A session very soon. So before that yes, it's very, very important, like we spoke about power of leverage. So make a strong team of professionals across, which can cover multiple aspects about finance, property, if you're into investment or and mortgage and things, so that you get benefit. And just sharing that, yes, we, Julius, myself, Parag, Infinity Financial, Propel, we also have accounting partners, convincing partners. So if you look up online as well, you'll see that there are hundreds of 5-star reviews about us. So if you're kind of feeling that where to start from, talk to us. There's no downside to it. There's no charges for just a friendly talk. Book a one-on-one session, and the coordinates of that will appear soon on your screen. We'll be happy to talk. Just sharing some things that we feel so happy about. One part is doing the business, but I think what gives me the most kick about what I'm doing is when people share their feedback about us. They share online as well. They talk to us and they say that how we have been able to impact their life. So a lot of them started from a lot of confusion where family, friends were talking about something and they were not sure where to go. But after discussions multiple ways and probing, because of being in the industry and that experience, we are able to ask the right questions, help people uncover what is their goal, what is that they're looking for. And that's where our idea is just to help them guide. People are able to find their own solutions, but they come back and say some good things about us and that we were able to help them in certain way. That's gives us the I think most kick, right,
Yeah,
Julius? So yeah, our coordinates are here in front of your screen. There's a QR code as well. You can scan that code to book an appointment with us. We can talk to you after this anytime, next few days, book a session. We'll be very happy to chat. So that kind of brings us to the end of this. We are seeing, Julius, there are a lot of questions here. I think the Q&A session last few webinars, what we are seeing is that there's so many questions and we have to extend the webinar. So without any more delay, we would like to start taking some questions. Okay, first, is refinancing beneficial? I'll take that, Julius. Refinancing can be beneficial. It depends on what you're looking out from refinancing. What's the reason to do refinance? So refinancing people primarily do for two purposes. One is to go to a bank which can give them a better interest rate, right? So if you're able to analyze that, if a current interest rate is, let's say, 6%, another bank is giving you a 5.5%, you will 0.5% of interest saving every month for the next whatever period of term. It's a direct saving. So if you can compare what the repayment difference between the two, it could be make an obvious choice that what are you getting out of it. Second reason why people refinance is that if they are looking to draw some equity from the current property, but their current bank is not giving them enough valuation, because of which they are not able to draw equity. Let's say if you think your property is worth $1.5 million, your loan is $1.2 million, and you want to take out equity. If you do valuation with the bank and it does a valuation of only $1.4 million, you'll not be able to draw equity out of it. But if you go to another bank and if they do a valuation of your property which is, let's say, $1.6 million, and we do see these kind of differences easily, 10% difference between banks valuation is very, very common, then you can straight away draw equity. So if you're refinancing to draw equity and use that money to buy an investment property or invest in shares or use for vacation or whatever purpose, if that's the purpose of refinance, that makes sense again, because you know that what use you're going to put that money. So you have to look at what your objective is. Just refinancing and going at another bank by not gaining much out of it and just maybe 0.05% interest rate reduction may not help you, because whenever you switch, whenever you refinance, there's always a cost as well. The bank that you're leaving, the bank that you're going to, the government, everybody will take a small fees out of it. So refinancing is only beneficial based on what you're looking out of it. I hope I answered your question. Question number 2, is there a limit on the additional payments that can be made each year? The answer is yes, yes and no. If you have a fixed rate loan, then every bank keeps a cap on how much extra repayment can you do in a year. But if you have a variable loan, then most of the banks, most of the products don't have a limit that how much you can make repayment. If you have an 800K loan and if you suddenly get an inheritance of 500K, you can just put it in the loan or put it in the offset, no questions asked. So you can start saving straight away. Next question. If we make additional payments, will it be applied directly to the principal or the interest, or allocated in the same proportional as regular repayments? Okay, good question. Let's say if you make an extra repayment, so let's say if you have an outstanding loan of $1 million and you make an extra repayment of $30,000, the way it will work is it will straight away bring your loan itself down to 970K. So now your loan is 970K. So your interest rate will be applied on that and your repayments will be calculated based on that. What a lot of banks do is by default, they will not change your repayment. They will keep the repayment amount same, but they will reduce your loan term. So if the repayment amount is same, but because your interest rate has reduced, so your overall interest will come down. So automatically more portion of your repayment will start going towards the loan, towards the principal. I hope that answers it. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Let me move on to the next one. Can we borrow the primary home and claim that under tax? Okay, although this is accounting related, I'll just share my thoughts, but please talk to your accountant that in Australia, owner-occupied properties cannot be used for saving tax on an annual basis, but owner-occupied properties, when you sell your home, there is no capital gains tax as well. That's how these are judged. Investment properties, you can claim if you're making loss on it every year, the income that you're getting is lower than what the expenses are, then you can use that for claiming tax as a negative gearing. But please talk to an accountant before you make any decision on this. The disclaimer is there. Okay, next question. Can you please provide examples post 2022 after the COVID boom? Everyone in Australia who made investments in real estate before COVID struck gold, made money, but nothing exceptional about it. Julius,
Yeah,
you want to take that? Yes.
Yeah. So there are a lot of locations which we have identified post 2022 were made around 30-35% gain in last 2 to 3 years. So it depends on COVID. What COVID did, the impact of the COVID is money was cheap, and then people got additional borrowing capacity, and then that's made the Sydney's market exhausted, because before COVID, a lot of people from Sydney used to invest into Sydney because entire southwest region were available in between $600,000 and $700,000. Till the Marsden Park is also around $800,000. Post that, then there are a lot of people started investing across. So that's the time when the borderless invested start. Then the more impact towards the Brisbane. So Brisbane have started growing from region to region, but few council were around $350,000 to $400,000, and then they grow up to $800,000. But fundamentally, there are a lot of councils which are growing now or after 2022. That's because of the affordability extremely low demand and supply gap, and third thing is basically extremely high population growth. Historically, the country is still at a very, very low inventory, and for next 3 to 4 years we are going to witness a similar type of situation where the affordability is growing because interest rates are dropping. Demand and supply has significant gap, and there are still a lot of locations which are in affordable segment. So yes, there are few opportunities remaining, not few actually, ample amount of opportunity remaining. Depends on what kind of strategy you build and what kind of asset you acquire, because every asset will have a growth. I hope I answered your question.
Good. Thanks a lot, Julius. That was good. There's another question for you. When did you start serving in Australia, and what's your service?
So before we answer that, I've started investing in properties from 2014. Started with New Zealand, and then I'm on a 14th purchase now. Similarly, me and Parag, if you combine our assets, probably will be very close to 40, 47, 48 assets. So we have ample amount of experience to buy the properties. I've started into this service from 2021, when I've started as the home office, and then we grown, and then we have offices in multiple locations across Australia. So we are a national buyer agency where we are serving around 40 to 45 clients a month, where 97% of our properties are off market. We are highly specialized in SMSF as well as the normal strategies. Biggest benefit we have, because we work along with the Infinity Financials, and we have in-house convincing, so it helps us to understand the contracts, build the strategies around the investor, analyze the financial situations, and then act accordingly. So we are a full-fledged buyer agency. We have our own product called Propel Next, which allow us to understand what locations to select next, because we have a predictive analysis facility in the application. So we buy across Australia with the help of the data, as well as we buy the assets which will align your strategy. We look at the properties, we do all the due diligence. We have full-fledged system built for the due diligence system. We also check out your contract. So we work with you right from getting the right property at the right price in the right market, identifying the right market much early before it goes warm or hot, till rental management. We onboard up your portfolio with us, and then we monitor your portfolio, and then we help you to grow your portfolio, because every property purchase will come with a strategy. So right from strategy building till rental management and your portfolio health checking, we do all of this.
Great, thanks, Julius. There's another question. This is more on the research. How do you look median income in a suburb?
So it depends on what kind of benchmark you use. The median income, see, there is the data coming from the ABS, which refresh every 4 to 5 years according to the censuses, and then we apply a CPA of 3% on the median income. So we do follow the ABS data to understand what are the current median income, and then according to the professional job diversification, they are the benchmark allocated for every profession. So we take care of that, and then what we do is we look at, okay, how many percent professionals are there, and what could be the income with that variety. So we segregate into two manner. Well, first is basically what is the median income in general terms, and then specialized into how many divided into the type of professions.
Good, thanks, Julius. There's a lot of questions coming in. Okay, guys, I think it's already time, but because there are so many questions, we're going to take a few more. Thanks for just waiting out there. I think this is an interesting part, because if you have any questions in your mind, by these you will get a lot of clarity. So we'll just take a few more. As an owner occupier with $175,000 to $200,000 in equity and $125K in savings, is it feasible to purchase my first investment property? Let me answer that first, and Julius, then you can add. So from us, whenever you're looking to buy a property, there are two aspects to the finance side of it. One is how much money that you have that you can use for deposit. Second is how much borrowing capacity do you have, so based on that, how much loan can you get, right? So let's say if you want to buy a property of $700K, okay, then you will need at least 10-15% kind of savings in your with you to be able to pay that. Whether it is in equity or in your savings, that's fine. So that's the amount of money you need. So given your numbers, yes, you have enough money for savings. But the other question is, do you have the borrowing capacity? That whether the bank will give you a loan of 80 or 90% of this property value, that is where we'll need to understand more about your financials. So you can book a session. We'll go through your financials and figure out that in terms of borrowing capacity, do you have enough or not? Okay. Next question. Which option is good? Salary sacrifice if it goes to super, or take the income and put in home loan as an extra payment? Okay. This is very specific and there are multiple aspects to this question. I may not be able to cover everything here because it also includes what's your super strategy is, what your pension long-term strategy is, taxation as well, because super tax versus the normal tax is very different. So if you have extra, if you are sacrificing extra to your super, then you have to think from the perspective, if you take that money instead of sacrificing to super, then what are you gonna do with that money? Are you going to invest it somewhere? That is one. Second option, of course, is that you put it against the home loan. So if you put it in the home loan, let's say if your home loan percentage as of today is 5.7%. So you are basically saving 5.7% on that money. Let's say if that was 50K, I'm talking about, let's say, whole whatever lump sum, then you're saving, if you put it in home loan, you're saving 5.7% of that. If you're using that money to buy an investment, and that investment is growing by 10%, then you're making 10% on that. If you're putting it in super, then you're not using that actively today, but you're putting that money in super from a future perspective, and depends on what your super is growing at, that money will grow at that rate, right? And then people buy property under super as well. So if you're thinking about that, then it can grow at a different rate. Plus there is different tax on each of these. So to answer this question in this session is going to be difficult. We have to talk offline, where we also need to talk to an accountant and get that view also regarding taxation on that. But I think I hope that this helped you think about what all parameters to think about. Okay. Next question. Can we use equity from PPOR and put into PPOR? PPOR, for those who don't know, is principal place of residence. Can we use equity from it and put it into it? It's like holding the year from like this or like this. It doesn't change anything much. You can use equity from PPOR. That means you can use that money, and if you put that back in this against the home loan, then that's money still with you. Whether you put it in your offset or redraw, it depends on the liquidity. The whole idea about equity cash out is if you use that money, take it out and use it for some other purpose, whether paying off some other loan or investing somewhere, that's when you can take it out. Okay. Next question. Good suburb in Queensland to invest? Julius, please.
Yeah, it depends on your strategy and the budget. And then Queensland is like very big state. It depends. So either you're looking into Brisbane or are you looking into the regional Queensland? We have a variety of suburbs. Before looking at the suburb, look at the council. So in a case, if I wanted to invest in a Brisbane now, either I'll invest into the inner Brisbane or towards the Moreton Bay Council, but not towards the Logan or the Ipswich now because they're overpriced and the affordability has the peak. If I still wanted to be into a regional Queensland, then other than Townsville, exceptionally all the other areas are overpriced. The rental proportions are more than 50%. Employment diversification is very low. So probably they are the market to exit now.
Okay. Thanks, Julius. Another one for you. The suburbs around Footscray will be in demand due to airport rail. Do you think so? I don't know about this one at all.
Yeah, it's very specific question because Footscray was a very, very low socioeconomic, but it had made some progress because it has a proximity to the CBD. It's in the Melbourne, by the way. So it depends on what your strategy is. When you are investing into the property, just don't look at the suburb. That is what we are always saying. Just look at it in a perspective of whether it will suit your portfolio. If your portfolio says currently if you don't need a high cash flow asset, high capital growth asset because you can't hold a lot of negative cash flow, then look for the asset which will balance your portfolio. If you're starting with something, yes, look at the property which will match your budget, which will give you enough capital growth, but it should have good cash flow also, because if the property will be severely negatively geared, then you can't expand. So yes, for the food spray, it might be right or wrong. It will be question of the fundamental because they are the government planning. But when you're looking at the property, just look at those fundamentals.
Good. I think that's very critical.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get blindsided by one parameter, while
Yeah.
there might be three others to kind of. There's a
Right.
weightage we have to put across, right? Okay. Julius, one more for you. This is an interesting one. What is the reason we couldn't get hold of properties by ourselves? Do we always have to depend on a BA?
So it's not like that. You can find the property by yourself also. It depends on how much time you wanted to invest into the property searching. Because when we look at the property, we just don't look at the property. We build a strategy, and property is an asset which will support your portfolio. So when we look at the property section, we do the research, and then we get into the market where it is going to be hot in next 6 months. So we have enough runway remaining. Property prices doesn't have more competition, and then we can start buying from there. Second thing is, when we are buying a multiple properties over there, we do all the due diligence. We go on ground, look at the area, because we have a old maps called S7 maps where we see, okay, what kind of pockets in that suburbs to be avoided. Because when you look at when you're getting into the suburbs where the socio-economic ranking is between 3 and 4, right? You could see there are a lot of streets where you have the commission homes, where you can see there are a lot of streets which are the good owner-occupier purchases. So we have to go onto the ground and understand. Then we build the relationship with the real estate agents, and then we start getting that stock. So when we are getting that stock over the off market, that's because of the relationship also. So if you can build all of this with your limited time, then yes, you can find the property by yourself, or else you have to hire a professional.
No, fair thing, Julius.
Yeah.
There's always a value of time, money. So that you have to judge for yourself in terms of the time you have, what the research you can do, the skills you have, negotiation, due diligence. I think these are some critical things that a buyer agent brings. Now, if you think you can do it all by yourself, then of course that's a good thing. But at least I think from the way I have seen a lot of people is at least gain some knowledge. Even if you have to hire a buyer agent, right? You should actively study the area a little bit. Maybe not go into a lot of detail, so that you can at least ask the right questions. That is very, very critical. Okay, next question. Is it possible to get rental yield close to monthly rental in one of the inner west suburbs in Sydney as part of rent vesting? Very specific question, Julius. Inner west suburbs of Sydney for rent vesting.
Okay, so if I could understand correctly, they wanted to, they don't want any negative gearing on the property.
Correct.
It's tough because in Sydney the prices are, Sydney's prices are more than $1 million to $1.5 million versus if you look at the rental yields are around 3 to 3.5%. Okay, less than 3% basically as a net. The interest rate is around 6%. So the straight answer is no. It's very hard to find out such a property which will be positively geared. Versus if I wanted to invest now, probably I'll not invest in Sydney. Rather, I will diversify my assets across Australia where I can at least achieve 5% rental yield.
Okay, all right. Cool. Thanks, Julius. Okay, another one. Do you help with SMSF property purchase?
Yes, we do. So in SMSF, see, every property journey has a strategy. SMSF strategy is very different than the normal property strategy. In SMSF, we actually look at the properties which will have a longer runway. Also, we look at the property sections where, okay, the suburb will have a more weightage in a long-term basis because of the fundamentals of the suburb. In SMSF, you can't buy a property where you can't subdivide and sell, or you can't buy very old properties because you can't actually do much with the land. Like you can't put the granny onto the property. So in SMSF, we have identified few suburb according to that strategies, and we are buying the suburbs. We are buying the properties in that suburb itself. So on a monthly property purchases, around 33 to 40% of the purchases are only happening in SMSF. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Just to add on to that, if you're thinking about SMSF, also a couple of things from the mortgage side. One is that SMSF borrowing doesn't impact your personal borrowing at all. So if your personal borrowing is already, let's say, maxed out, you can still borrow under SMSF. It has no bearing. The two have no bearing on each other because SMSF is a very different legal structure, entity structure. You form an SMSF trust company and then you buy under that. So one is that part, and second is, like Julia said, that there are a few constraints on properties that you buy under SMSF. Similarly, there are a few constraints on the loan also that you take for an SMSF property. One of the examples is that you can't take more than 80% loan on that property. No lender will give you. The big banks don't do SMSF loans, so we have to go to specialized lenders who do a lot of SMSF. Also, just keep in mind, we have been talking about equity cash out a lot. In an SMSF purchase, you can't easily take out equity cash out to invest another. So the strategy becomes different even from a loan perspective as well. Okay. Next question, how to structure portfolios so that kids can inherit property without paying tax? Okay. This is a very, very specific inheritance taxation related question. I think it is better that you take an advice from the right professional. We would not be able to take it right now. Specific for accounting and taxation, please go to your accountant and discuss this. What is minimum amount needed in SMSF to buy an investment property? Okay, let me answer that, Julius, then you can add it to it. There is no minimum amount prescribed as such, but just like I said that when you're buying under SMSF, you have to put in at least 20% from your side. Plus there will be some expenses as well, like stamp duty, solicitor, if you're hiring a buyer agent, building inspection, pest inspection, all these expenses will also, and SMSF setup itself. So there will be some expenses as well, which will go from SMSF. So you have to have at least that much money in your super that you should be able to bear all these expenses. Let's just take an example, small example. Let's say if you want to buy a 600K property, 20% is 120K plus stamp duty, plus buyer agent fee, plus solicitor will be another roughly 40 grand. So you need at least 160K in super. Plus you will want to leave some money in the super also. So that in case of any kind of emergency or any kind of thing, you have some money in super to take care of the expenses. So for a 600K property, you need at least 180K, 190K in the super balance. But if you want to go for a property of let's say 400K, then 20% will be 80K, another 25-30K for the other expenses. So it goes closer to 110-120K. So at least that much money should be in super. So if your super balance, let's say if it's two of you, husband wife combined, if the super balance is less than 100K, then it gets very, very difficult to buy a property. Okay, next one. What are your charges for providing the service? I'm assuming this is for buyer agent. So Julius, you go first, yeah, please.
Yeah, so we charge $13,000 plus GST, out of which first $1,100 is payable when you're sending a contract. Rest of the amount is payable when your property's contract will become unconditional. In that, in services, we include, okay, we look for a property, we look for a suburb, we do all the due diligence on the property, we negotiate, we run through the contract with the solicitor, we help you to sign a contract. We have an in-house financing, so we can help you to get your mortgage brokers, and then we have an in-house conveyancer, so we can help you to do the settlement. We'll arrange your property management. Also, we onboard your portfolio with us. So right from strategy till the rental management and the next purchases, we handle everything.
Great. And just to add to it, as a mortgage broker, we don't charge any fees, but yes, you have to buy me a coffee or beer, depending on what we both like. That will be it. Okay. Next question, guys. Sorry, there's a lot of questions. We are trying to cover as much as we can today, but we may not be able to take everything because in the interest of time, I know everybody's waiting. It's not mid-afternoon. We are still late in the evening, so we'll just answer a few more and then we'll call it a day. Happy to take questions offline later. Book an appointment with us and we'll take them later. Okay, what is the impact on loan if we do repayments monthly, fortnightly, or on weekly basis? Okay, like I covered earlier, that if you make fortnightly payments instead of monthly, because of just by the nature of it, because there's one extra repayment which will go in the year, it forces you to make that extra saving. So it helps you make bit more repayment every year. On the interest portion also, weekly versus fortnightly versus monthly, there's a bit of interest that you save. The lower the let me put it this way, the higher the frequency of the repayment, the overall you're saving on the interest, right? So there'll be more saving if you do it weekly. These are not massive impacts, but things that you can do easily and it saves you some money. So as simple as that. Okay. Okay, we have a few more questions. Okay. Next question, Julius. equity versus real value of home. How much is the gap? Okay, let me answer that first.
Yep.
Okay. Equity versus real value of home. Now, what is equity? Equity is the value of the property minus the loan on it, right? The loan is a fixed number. A question comes around, what's the value of the property? Now, as an owner, I will want to believe that my house value is $3 million. But as a buyer, somebody else might say, no, your house value is only $2.5 million, right? So valuation is always subjective. Depends on who is valuing it, right? So if you put it in the market, the real estate agent that you talk to, he might say, okay, he will be able to sell your house for $3.2 million. But when you put it in the market decides what's the value of the property. The market best offer you get, if it is only $2.9 million, then that's the value of your property. Same way, when you do a valuation of a property, let's say if you ask a bank to do valuation of a property, the bank's valuer will go, the valuer will try and compare with similar properties in the suburb that have sold recently. Now, if there are 40 properties to select from, if I choose 5 properties, I'm a valuer. If Julius has another valuer, his choice, choose some other 5 properties. If another valuer, he choose some other 5 properties, then the value we will ascribe to that property will be different. And that's the reason why valuation done by different banks could vary a lot. We have seen the valuations can vary as much as 10%, 15%. That's a lot of variation. So your equity will always be what equity can you draw depends on the valuation done by the bank with which your loan is there. And that's where, if your bank from which you have taken the loan, if it is valuing your property at only $2.7 million, you can only take the equity based on that. But if another bank does a valuation of $3.3 million, let's say, then you have more equity. So equity and value can be, there could be a big gap that way. I hope I answered that. Okay, just maybe 1 or 2 more questions, Julius, and then we'll call it a day. Can we get tax benefit only on new home, like capital, like depreciation? Tax questions, sorry guys, just because taxation is a subject which is for a professional to advise on, I would rather prefer not taking any tax questions today. And we anyways have a lot of questions, we are running out of time, so please discuss with the accountant. Last, I think we'll take it as the last question. We're way over the time. How purchasing on trust works and why it doesn't affect your borrowing capacity? Okay, that's an interesting one. Purchasing under trust. So let me expand a bit on trust structure, and then Julius, if you can add on to that later. Trust structure is a different, when you buy under trust, basically you form a trust, you form a company. Trusts are also of multiple types. It can be a unit trust or a family trust. Depends on, so first of all, when you're forming a trust, it depends on who are you forming with. If you're forming with family versus if you're forming with a friend, you may want to choose a different structure. Taxation is different. Land taxes that are put on it, they are different. Each state has a different subject. So there are a lot of factors to look upon it. When you form a trust, so these are things to first of all keep in mind. And trust is a different entity structure. You become a guarantor on the loan as an individual who is a trustee and who is a beneficiary, and you are on the director of the company, right? So ultimately what happens is that it is you who is guaranteeing the loan, right? So if your income is limited, if your borrowing capacity as an individual is, let's say, X, and if you're buying under trust and you're being the guarantor of it, it may not just increase just like that, because your personal liabilities are also there. Now, different banks have different policies around trust. They have different ways of looking at the financials of trust, and each bank has a different policy there. So the way the income is taken, the way negative gearing is taken, the way the guarantor's income is taken, and the expenses are taken, that all differs. So it may happen that with certain banks, you can get a higher borrowing, with certain banks, you do not. It depends on each bank's policy. So one is the borrowing capacity. Second is the whole inheritance, that how your money will be passed on to the next generation. Third is how the taxation works. Fourth is what are the costs involved. These are all factors to keep in mind when you're thinking about a trust structure. It will be good to talk about this in more detail and get the view of your accountant as well. Yeah. Julius, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just accounting question, because before you start forming the trust, you need to understand whether you need a trust or not. So until unless a financial planner or accountant will confirm that, you should not get into it.
Fair. Okay. Guys, we have taken a lot of questions. I know there are still more, and just because of the interest of, we are already almost 22 minutes past the time. Thanks a lot for listening to us today, and I hope that we were able to clarify at least some doubts. And if you have any questions on your mind, we know that there are some questions already there. We can reach out. You can reach out to us. We'll be happy to take questions later, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, anytime, or offline. You have our coordinates. They will be coming to your email and SMS also. Book a session. Happy to chat. We'll call it a night. Have dinner and good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julius.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.